So in this time together in our class, we're talking about the spiritual gifts that God has given to each one of us and how He expects us to discover what they are and to use them for the benefit of the church. And the church is always stronger, more effective, more beautiful when every person is doing their part to contribute to the overall working of the church, which the Bible calls the body of Christ. So we're calling this Unwrap Your Spiritual Gift, Discovering Your Motivational Gifts. And we're back on track now to look at the next of the gifts. Last week we did somewhat of a summary and review because it's been several months since we explored the introduction and the first of the gifts, the perceiver gift. And now we move into the next of the gifts, which is the server. Someone was asking if we had a survey for last week, and I'm sure we do, but I'm not sure where it is. There's some on the back wall? Okay, for the perceiver gift. So if you need one of those, you can pick one of those up. I would encourage you, if you have the church app, the best way to fill out the survey is through the church app. If you don't do technology, we will get you one of the sheets to fill out on paper copy. And if I could get a couple of volunteers, Dustin, would you mind helping maybe somebody else? If you just raise your hand, thanks Steve, just raise your hand. If you need a paper copy, this is the server gift. They'll get you one and you can fill it out and return it to me at the end of class. However, the easiest way is to open the Northside Nashville app, and you can do it digitally. And if you do it digitally, it's automatically going to be sent to our church database. So if you open up our church app on the home page this morning, you're going to see, and I forgot to mention at the beginning of the sermon outline was on there as well. And every week, there will be a digital sermon outline on the church app that you can, as you listen to the sermon, you can fill in the blanks digitally on your phone. I know a lot of people did that last week or got a lot of positive feedback about that, but that was there this morning as well and will be each week. But the third box on the opening page of the app says Server, the hands of the body. And if you click on that, there's a little green button that says Server Survey. And if you click on that, you fill in your personal information, name and email address. And then you can answer each one of these questions as we go through it this morning. Now, don't fill it out yet on the app or the paper copy. We're going to go through each item together, and you'll consider each item and rank yourself as we move through it. But let me introduce it first, and then we're going to take the survey together. Again, if you fill it out on the app, I'll have your results. If you do the paper copy, by the way, if you're watching online, that's the easiest way for you to do it. It's on the church app. But if you're here in person and you have the physical copy, as you fill it out this morning, be sure and give it to me at the end so I can get your results. Okay, so let's look at the text first before we get into some of the slides. We're basing this study on Romans chapter 12. If you want to be looking on your smartphone or in your paper copy of the Bible. Romans chapter 12. And I'm just going to start at the first verse and read this section. The primary focus is verses 6 through 8. But I'm going to read a little bit more than that. So this is from the New Living Translation. You can either follow along or just, if anyone has ears, let them hear. Okay, here we go. And so, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all He has done for you. Let them, that is your bodies, be a living and holy sacrifice, the kind He will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship Him. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think you are better than you really are. Now think of this in context of spiritual gifts, because that's what he's getting to. Don't think you are better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourself, measuring yourselves by the faith God has given us. Just as our bodies have many parts and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. In His grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So, if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. Now keep reading, because this really gets where the rubber meets the road, why we need to know our gifts, appreciate our gifts, all contribute our gifts to the work of the church. Verse 9, don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong, hold tightly to what is good, love each other with genuine affection, and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope, be patient in trouble, and keep on praying. And when God's people are in need, be ready to help them. So, there's more that he'll say than that, but that gets the gist of it. So, we're primarily in this class looking at verses 6 through 8 and the specific gifts, the 9 gifts that he lists here, and trying to focus on understanding what they are and trying to determine what gift each one of us has. So, you'll see here, there are 3 big passages when it comes to spiritual gifts. The 1 Corinthians 12 section, the Ephesians 4, and here at Romans 12. And we're looking at Romans 12. We've already looked at the perceiver, which is the eyes of the body. Again, if you've not taken that survey yet, that's on the app as well. You can find that on the first page as well. Go back and take that survey if you've not done it. But this morning, we're looking at the second of the 9 gifts. That is the server. And the server is the hands of the body. We look at the text here specifically in Romans 12. If your gift is serving, then serve. So, the server is the hands of the body of Christ. Okay. So, what does the server do? The server, by definition, renders practical service. The need that is met is the very practical things that need to happen to make sure the church is working well together. And what the server does is keep the work of ministry moving along. All right, so the server, by definition, this is the definition that we would give here regarding the server. The server receives joy in helping, assisting, carrying out instructions, and being of use in a wide variety of ways. So, again, with each of these spiritual gifts, we're talking about how that if you find the gift God has given you, the way He has wired you, we're all different, and God made us that way intentionally. He doesn't expect you to be like me or me to be like you. He's given a wide variety of gifts in the church. He's wired it into your DNA, into your personality, into the person that you are. And if you can tap into that gift and realize what that gift is, then suddenly, instead of serving out of duty or drudgery, you serve out of enthusiastic joy. And so if you're a server, it would give you a lot of anxiety if somebody comes to you and expects you maybe to teach a Bible class. Now, maybe you would do it, but it's not really in your wheelhouse. It's not really in your comfort zone. But somebody asks you to do something behind the scenes to serve in some way, to maybe make a meal for somebody or go help somebody change a tire or something like that in the name of Jesus, you're all over that because it's just the way you're wired. And that's the way God made you. So we're looking at that particular gift. Now we're going to look at the survey now. We're going to have some discussion toward the end, but let's go ahead and move through the survey. If you've got the app open, you'll look at each one of the questions or in the paper copy. Now, one programming note about the discrepancy between the app version and the paper copy. In the paper copy, there are, we're going to look at each one of these questions, and you're going to just try to be honest about it and answer it for yourself. But you notice you've got options of never, seldom, sometimes, usually, mostly, and always. There are 6 options. Well, because of a technical limitation in the app, I can only do 5 instead of 6. So I omitted the never option in the app. So if you feel like I never do this, you can just mark the 1 as seldom. It's going to basically be the same thing because what we're interested in is looking at the scale of how many of these that are on the top end for you versus the bottom end and trying to determine where your top gifts are. And so it'll come out the same way. It's not really an issue, but just a little bit of a difference there, if you'll notice. So there's no right or wrong answers on any of these questions. It is it's subjective rather. It's a self-discovery test. You're not trying to compare your answers with other scores. What is important here is for you to just answer honestly what first comes to your mind. And what we're trying to do is look at the relationship of the way that you rank yourself on this gift in comparison to the other 8 gifts and to see what your top gifts are, top couple of gifts are, to see where your strengths where God has placed those gifts inside of each one of us. So let's look at each question. Number 1, the server easily recognizes practical needs and is quick to meet them. So what you'll do is you'll mark yourself here. Do you think that describes you? Never, seldom, sometimes, usually, mostly, or always? Starting with seldom on the app. How would you rank yourself? You easily recognize practical needs and you're quick to meet them. In other words, it's like you have a built-in needs radar. When there's a need, man, you see it. And you're genuinely motivated to try to meet that need, and you genuinely enjoy serving. So, do you easily recognize practical needs and quick to meet them? That's the first one you need to rank yourself. Number 2, do you especially enjoy manual projects, jobs, and functions? Do you like a project? Do you have the ability to work well with your hands? Maybe you're great at art or repairs or carpentry or plumbing or electrical or gardening or sewing or cooking. Or is there some particular area there that maybe you just that's kind of natural for you and you enjoy those kinds of manual projects and job functions? Rank yourself there on the scale. Number 3, do you keep everything in meticulous order? You can't stand clutter, dirt, or disorganization. To what degree would that describe you? Maybe it's down here at seldom. Maybe it's all over there at always. But on the scale, where are you? Number 4, are you a detailed person with a good memory? Maybe you're the kind of person that you remember where you filed everything. Somebody asks you where the receipt is, you can put your hand right on it. You remember all the birthdays. There's never a birthday that goes by before you know whose birthday it is. I can't even. Okay, so let me just say for me personally on this one, I can hardly remember when my birthday is. Okay, I sure don't remember. I mean, it's a struggle for me to remember. So it's like I'd be seldom on this one. But where are you? Maybe you're the kind of person that files away memories from the past. I knew a guy growing up. I go back, I hadn't seen him in years. But I can go see him right now, and he'll say, hey, man, you remember that time? And he'll give the story in so much detail that I'm like, dude, I hardly even remember that happening. And you remember what color shirt I was wearing. All right? So some people are that way. So how would you rank yourself on that one? Number 5, do you enjoy showing hospitality? You love to entertain. You love inviting people over to the house. You just like being with people and serving others. How would you rank yourself? Number 6. Do I need to slow down or are we good? Good pace? Number 6. Would you say about yourself that whenever you have something to do, a project, a task, that you stay with it until it's complete? Or maybe you need to help somebody along, help somebody do something, and you stay with them until it's finished. You finish what you start, what you commit to, you complete, and you finish the job and you want to do it well. Do the job well. Okay? Some of you are that way. Some of you, I have people in my life that I know that are this way. Nobody I live with, okay, we're not talking about Michelle here. But I know some people in my life that, it's like they never finish anything. It's like they get lots of stuff started, but it's like always 75% complete, all around everywhere you look. All right, so that would be seldom for that individual, but maybe you're much higher up on that scale. No right or wrong answers here. Not good, bad, or ugly. It's just who you are. Okay, it's fine. God made you that way. So how would you rank yourself? Number 7, maybe you have a hard time saying no when somebody needs some help. And because of that, you get overcommitted, over-involved, and sometimes you burn yourself out and get exhausted because you can't really tell anybody no. How would you rank yourself there? Let's see. Number 8. Are you more interested in meeting the needs of others than meeting your own needs? Maybe somebody needs some help, and you know about yourself that you would be quick to rush out and help somebody else, knowing meanwhile maybe your wife or your husband needs help at home, and you'll be quick to neglect what you know you should be doing at home to go help somebody else. Or maybe you know that you need some rest. It's been a long day and you really need to recover, but you're so interested in helping others, you're going to rush out and help them even if you're absolutely know that it's a detriment to yourself. More interested in meeting the needs of others than meeting his or her own needs. How would you rank yourself? Number 9, you enjoy working on short-term goals rather than long-term goals. So for the server, you're going to volunteer for a project, and it's like short-term bursts. You want to complete this, complete this, complete this. But whenever you think about maybe something that's a bigger project that's going to take more time, you get real easily overwhelmed by that. If it's something that's like a big, overarching thing. So you'd much rather work on short-term goals. How would you rank yourself? Number 10. Maybe you like to show love for others in deeds and actions that maybe for you, talk is cheap. The way you really show somebody love is what you're doing for them, the way that you're serving them. And you believe that actions speak louder than words. Okay? How would you say? How strongly do you feel about that? Okay? I'm trying to get a gauge for you. Number 11. Do you really need to feel appreciated? Now, certainly we all want to be appreciated, but how strong is that inside of you that you are driven by people recognizing the things you do? You want to feel valued. You want to feel needed. It gives you a sense of identity that other people do depend on you and what you do to serve them. How strong do you feel that? Okay? Number 12, maybe this describes you. Do you tend to do more than you're asked to do? So let's say there is something that somebody asks for you to do, to serve, to be involved in, and you actually overperform. You do more than what is expected, and you really don't want to stop. It's like even when the thing is completed, you feel like you got to keep doing it more and more. It's like this was good enough, this is sufficient, but you feel like you got to just make it even better, make it even better, make it even better. All right, maybe that describes you. How would you rank yourself? Number 13. Do you feel your greatest joy in doing something that is helpful? In other words, it just genuinely makes you come alive. If you feel like you're doing something to help others, and you're disappointed, genuinely disappointed, when you're not allowed to help. So let's say that there's something going on at church, there's some activity that's happening, and there were a lot of volunteers, and they got plenty of help, but then for whatever reason, you didn't get asked to help. And it just really kind of bothers you. It's like, I would have loved to help with that, because you feel your greatest joy in doing it. You're energized by serving, and maybe disappointed whenever you're not, a part of that at that particular time. So how strong do you feel about that? Number 14. While you want to serve, if you're asked to actually be the lead of over a project or a lead over a ministry, that feels completely undoable and overwhelming. Because servers are more followers, not leaders. And if you force them to function in a leadership capacity, it can be frustrating. And when they're asked to lead, suddenly they lose their joy. So let me give you an example. How many times, and I bet there's some people in the room like this, I can't tell how many times I've had conversations with people, and I'll say, how's work going? And they'll tell me a story, something like this. You know, I used to love what I do. I mean, I was in the grind doing it, and I felt like that was where it was, and I just felt passionate about it. And then the worst thing in the world happened. What happened? You get fired? No, I got promoted into management. And then all of a sudden, it's like you got more money, it's a higher salary, it's more responsibility, more prestige, more recognition. But then all of a sudden, it's like I'm in the same business, but I don't find any joy in it anymore. Because if you've got the serving gift and you're being forced or asked to function in a leadership role, you just lose all joy. It's just drained right out of you because you're a server. Okay? There's not more value to one over the other. We need all people doing their part. And it's all of equal value. Well, how would you rank yourself there? Number 15, do you have a real high energy level? I remember whenever I saw the funeral for Bush the Elder. Do you remember? Did anybody watch that funeral on TV when Bush the Elder passed away and his son Bush the Younger was speaking, and he said, "You know, my dad had two speeds: wide open and asleep." Maybe some of you can relate to that. All right, so the server, somebody that like that, you know, that's the way you are. It's like, I'm wide open or I'm asleep. It's like I have a real high energy level. Maybe you live in one speed, fast forward all the time, boundless energy, unusual endurance, don't need much sleep. You know, some people, it's like, you give me 4 or 5 hours of sleep, I'm good. Okay? But that's not me. That is not me. Never on that one, okay? But maybe, I don't know about you, so how would you rank yourself on that one? Number 16, you can't stand to be around clutter. You just can't relax until everything is in its place and everything's straight. You need a clean desk and an organized space. How would you rank yourself? Number 17, you tend to be a perfectionist. You want things done and you want them done well. And you're meticulous about it. Okay? Number 18, do you view serving to be the top priority in life? Do you feel like that for you, it's like that is what life is about, that's what Christianity is about, and I simply can't understand why other people, when they see needs, they don't just go right there to meet them. How can you walk by? How can you not meet that need? You believe that serving is the essence of Christianity. And you know yourself well enough to know that you got to be careful on insisting that other people value serving over everything else, because it is so strong in you that you feel like that everybody ought to be that way. Everybody ought to serve and ought to see every need and meet every need. Now, I'm going to say more about this in a minute. As Christians, we should all be serving. We should all be meeting needs. But what we're talking about here is how strongly do you feel that that's just natural in you? Not like what you ought to do, but it's just like, it's like a no-brainer. It's just the way you're built. Okay? How would you rank yourself? Number 19. Do you prefer doing a job to delegating it? There's a job that needs to be done, and you know I would just rather do it as to ask somebody else to do it, because if I do it, I know it's going to be done right. If I delegate it, not so sure. So you have a real hard time delegating. And so you feel guilty if you don't do the job yourself, and you actually feel like, well, if this job isn't done and done well, and I haven't done it, I'm going to feel guilty that I didn't do it. I should have done it instead of asking somebody else to do it. How would you rank yourself there? And then number 20, you strongly support other people who are in leadership. So you know that leadership is not your gift, that's not where you like to function, you don't want to be in that role. And so those that are in support of leadership are the kinds of people that really feel at home as secretaries, office administrators, vice presidents, committee members, that kind of thing. A person of this kind of disposition has incredible loyalty. So how would you feel that you would rank yourself there? No right or wrong answers. It's just how you feel, what first comes to your mind. You really strongly support others that are in leadership because you don't want to be in that role. So I'm in support of those that are. Okay? All right, so what's your total? So what you'll want to do, if you're on the app, we're going to total it for you. But if you've got the paper copy, and we can total it for you too. But what we're trying to do is, you're going to notice on the scale that of 0 to 5 on the paper copy. Over to the side, you've got your total points, so you would write what number you checked off on each question, and then we'll total it up for the total score. What we're trying to do is we're trying to look and see if you as an individual, any of us, when you've taken each one of these, you'll have a numerical value for each of the 9 gifts. And we'll see which number is the top, which is your strongest gifting, and then your secondary gifting, and we'll have an idea of where the gifts lie in the church. And we'll build a database in the office so that whenever we need volunteers or we're trying to build ministry, instead of going to you, if you've got the server gift, we wouldn't go to you and ask you to do something that is not in that realm of gifting. I mean, we would ask for volunteers for you to do that, but how much better if what you're doing is in your gift? You get what I'm saying? I mean, I know a lady at the last church I was in who was really good to volunteer to teach children's classes, but she said to me over and over again, she said, you know what? I don't enjoy it. Like, I do it because I know it needs to be done, but I just do not enjoy teaching children's Bible classes. And I was like, well, maybe we need to find what you do enjoy, because you will serve in a much more efficient and joyful way if we find what your gift is. Okay, so when we think about the server, let me open it up for a little bit of discussion here. So you gotta grasp a little bit of the server gift. How do you think this gift blesses the church? In what ways do you think the server gift is a needed gift in the church and is a tremendous blessing to the church? I'm not sure if we've got anybody with microphones down here. Oh, we do. Oh, we do. Great. So anybody, how do you think the server gift is a tremendous blessing to the church? How does it really help? Not all at once. Anybody? How's the server gift a blessing to the church, do you think?
Well, there should be a lot that would be accomplished with that. If you have someone that's in that role, or you have multiple people in that role, then you're going to see the church just continue to function and beyond its belief. I don't think you need that, Dave. I'm pretty much a loudmouth, so it's not necessary to have that.
Okay, this will help people on the stream hear you.
But again, if in any organization, and the church is a great example of that, if you don't have people who are doing tasks, now being in a nonprofit setting that I've been in all my career, I know that firsthand. And so the church plays right into that, is that all of those individuals are going to be the ones that are going to make things happen. And if they're not happening, then the church is not happening.
Excellent. Kind of makes me think of the old saying, we got too many chiefs and not enough Indians. The church is not going to function very well if you got everybody that's got an opinion and everybody's wanting to, but nobody that actually puts the hand to the plow, right? So yeah, we've got to have those folks. Somebody else. I think Kelly is pressuring people to comment.
This is the correct answer from a counselor server, right? I think it does help to connect the body. I'm thinking about what happened in Acts 7, when there was a need and it wasn't getting met for one group, and the need was getting met for another. So having the gift of service, you have deacons who can recognize that, or people who can recognize the service. It takes away
Yeah.
from distracting the church from our true mission. Service is part of it, but it keeps us from losing track of what we're here for.
And I love that story there in Acts because it says that the apostles, when they recognized the need, it didn't say that the apostles went and met the need themselves personally. They said, it's not good that we should leave the Word of God in prayer to serve tables. Now, were the apostles too good to do that? Absolutely not. Well, why would they say it's not good for us to leave the Word of God to serve tables? It wasn't that they weren't too good, that they were too high and mighty to serve tables. No. They recognized how much better it is if we can find people that we can appoint to that task to meet that need so we can continue to function in this need over here so it's not neglected. Yeah. Do we have another comment? So there's a tremendous blessing in the church to having the gifts. Now, let me say this, and we're going to get to the other side of the coin, but I need to spend just a minute on this. It is true that sometimes God calls you and me outside of the sphere of our natural gifts. This is an extremely important point in today's lesson, maybe the most crucial point. I have seen that sometimes in the church, I think many of you have seen so far how important that this discussion is. But sometimes it can go awry. And here's what I mean. You can start educating the church on spiritual gifts and say, find your spiritual gift and then thrive in that gift. And so if you're not careful, what I could unknowingly or unintentionally contribute to in a church by this discussion is we fast forward 6 months down the road, a year down the road, and somebody comes to you and says, hey man, we really need some help here in this. And you say, as a cop-out to involvement, oh no, that's not my gift. It's like, could you come help me? We're going to go visit this person in the hospital. Oh, that's not my gift. And so what we're not saying, now that may be true, but understanding yourself doesn't give you an out from doing good, right? Like the lady I said a moment ago that was willing to teach children's Bible classes. Yes, it would be great if we could find a place where she could thrive in her gift. But is it not the Spirit of Christ in her that says, I'm willing to operate outside of my natural gifting because there is a need? Are you with me? Okay? So sometimes God calls us to do that. And when He calls you to operate outside of your natural gifting, He will anoint that. You could say, well, maybe that's not my gift. Maybe I'm real weak in that area. Well, guess what? If you have faith and you feel like God is presenting an opportunity to you and He wants to use you, He's going to anoint that task that is beyond your natural gifting. What I'm trying to say here is, just because you have a knowledge of the spiritual gifts, the motivational gifts in Scripture, that does not excuse you from doing what God is calling you to do. So the prime example of this is Moses, right? You remember Moses? God, burning bush, holy ground, take your shoes off. I need to send, my people have cried to me from Egypt. They need deliverance. Moses, I'm going to send you. What does Moses say? What does he say? Not me, not my gift. It's not my gift. My brother Aaron, good speaker. Me, I get tongue-tied. I'm not a good speaker. I think you got the wrong person. It's not my gift. And maybe it wasn't. I suspect Moses knew himself well. And he knew he was not an eloquent speaker, maybe not a persuasive guy. And what does God say to Moses? Moses, what did He say? Who made your mouth? What's God saying to Moses? He's saying, okay, Moses, this may not be your gifting, but I'm calling you to do this, and I will anoint it. I will be with you, He says to Moses. Okay? So I think this is an important point, that we're trying to get to know ourselves well, to see where our strengths are, and let's try to operate in those strengths. But that is not an excuse to somehow give you a pass when God may be calling you to operate somewhere out of your natural gifting. Yes, sir.
There are times when God calls you to, in specific situations, to do things that are not in your comfort zone, but are necessary. I think about a time years ago when I was married. A friend of my wife's was in a situation and was going through a divorce, and they needed to move, and so we went to help. And generally, I'm more of a follower than a leader, or at least that's how I see myself. But within a few minutes, I realized this crew needed some leadership when I saw a refrigerator flying off a dolly into the yard because they didn't know what they were doing. And I'm like, this is sad that I'm the one that knows the most about how to move people. But it was I needed to step up.
There you
and
go.
so I did, and we got through it. And then there were other times when I needed to sit down and shut up and follow. And I'm humble enough to know that's probably more the thing I need to do. But sometimes you have to be there to step up, and God will put you in those situations. You got to be sensitive enough to recognize it.
Absolutely. That's excellent. That's exactly right. So when we think about the challenges to any of these gifts, I'm going to come to you in just a second, John. When we think about the challenges to these gifts, here's the point. Every gift, regardless of what gift you have, can either be used in a way that is constructive, or it can be used in a way that is actually destructive. Every gift has its own challenges, okay? And you have to hold the bad tendencies in check, okay? Like we talked about in the previous gift, the perceiver. The perceiver is a tremendous gift to the church because the perceiver is in tune. The truth radar of the perceiver is highly attuned. And it perceives what's going on in the situation and speaks into it confidently and boldly. And the church needs those people that will do that, right? But if you're not careful, if you're not humbled and guided by the Spirit to use your gift in a constructive way as a perceiver, the destructive perceiver is the person that goes around and is very judgmental of others and really kind of shoots their mouth off and says hurtful things because, and they justify and say, I'm just calling it like I see it. Truth hurts. You get what I'm saying? So every gift has its ways in which it is absolutely beautiful and constructive to help, but it can be destructive if you don't understand the challenges to the gift and hold those bad tendencies in check. John?
I was going to say you could speak to this more, but the way that we as humans develop our personalities, there's been a lot of science behind that, and almost all the science will say this statement, that the way we develop our personality comes from a position of need. We had a huge need when we were young and vulnerable to be loved, to be seen, to have peace, to be individual, all those types of things. So we develop a style of getting that need met, and we call that personality. So that's what, all science kind of says that. And I don't think Scripture says it per se, but think about Peter. If you were going to look in Scripture and say, what's Peter's gift? It's to stand up and be bold and fight, and I'm all in, all or none. And Jesus spends his whole life trying to get him to lay that gift down. It's like, I don't want you to do that. I would say because you got that from a bad position, you got that because you weren't good enough and you had to find a way to survive. I need you to lay that aside because you don't need it anymore. You're free from that. And then he frees Peter from that gift through Peter's denial. I don't even know who my best friend is. Never seen him before. Just think about that. That's Moses. Moses had just come out of Egypt as a murderer, and in the eyes of everybody else, I'm nothing. So it's like God redeems those things that makes. When we get it all figured out, then He takes us. Okay, now that you've got that gift that you came from by getting it your way, I need you to put that aside. Paul's that way. Paul's logic and his smart, his education, all that goes aside. That God really takes gifts and He says, let me change your motivation for that gift.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's a great point because you think about Peter, Jesus humbles Peter from that gift, from the destructive ways of that gift, to then release him into because who's preaching that first sermon in such a bold and powerful way? Or you think about, you mentioned Paul, who is so logical and so direct, and then Paul writes and says, but God gave me a thorn in the flesh to keep me from exalting myself. What's God doing? He's trying to rein in and direct in a healthy way Paul's gifts. Yeah. Yes?
Is this working? We had a lady here who, to me, like when I was reading this chapter months ago, like her face just was prominent in my mind, and that was Jennifer Comer. She was, I know y'all didn't know her, but she was the epitome
I've heard lots of
of
yeah.
serving, being in the background, not wanting recognition, but getting things done just to an extent that nobody maybe knew that they were needed, and also finishing her job. It was just like, this was the picture in my mind. And I kind of wanted to rank myself lower because I was like, I'm not Jennifer in a lot of this, but then I was thinking that's also who I really admire and want to be like. So
maybe speaks
sometimes
to
that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you think the gift, when we see the benefit, you look at a Jennifer Comer, you look at somebody that has a beautiful serving gift, and it's pretty clear what a blessing that would be to the church. So then you start to think to yourself, but is there a way that gift could become polluted? I gave you the example of the perceiver, how the polluted perceiver gift could be real judgmental and hurtful and, in speech. But how do you think a gift of serving could actually become polluted? Any thoughts there? Do you think it could?
If you're not careful, it can very easily become about what I'm doing instead of what God's doing through me. That's where we have to keep a check on our humility. This isn't about what I'm doing. I'm just a tool in the toolbox of God. This isn't me being working as an independent contractor or something like that. No, I'm a screwdriver, or I'm a hammer, or I'm a saw. But God is the power behind it. But it's so easy in this world to forget that because we're in a world where it's a me-centered world instead of a God-centered world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right. I think you're going to see that in here. Several of the things that they point out in the book is, first of all, one of the ways that the gift could become polluted is that you could be critical of others who do not help out with the obvious practical needs. You see, you're so in tune. You see, the server gift has a server radar. Like the radar is highly attuned to needs around them. So if I'm lower on the end of having the server gift, it may not be that I'm calloused or unsensitive. It may be that I just walk by and I'm kind of oblivious. I don't even notice the need. And for a server, they might look at me and say, "Are you kidding me? How could you not see this? How could you ignore this?" So the server believes that the present physical need is absolutely the most important thing. It's like we should stop everything else until this need is met. Okay? Because you're so in tune with that. So I've got some checkpoints on each one of these. So for the server, if you have a high serving gift, you might need to check yourself a little bit and realize that relational needs can be just as crucial as physical ones. Okay? If you're a high server, you see the tasks that need to be done, and you're like Martha in the kitchen, and you're very judgmental toward Mary that's at the feet of Jesus. It's like, if she really cared about Jesus, she'd be in here helping me prepare this meal for him. And she's in there just sitting there listening to him talk. You understand what I'm getting at? Is that you might need to realize that relational needs are just as crucial as physical ones. And understand that not everybody has a sharp need radar like you have. God made you with that sharp need radar, and your need radar may not be as maybe more highly attuned than someone else's is, just naturally. Okay? Yes.
I have a question. When you're talking about the difference of people seeing needs, and you're talking about relational needs, are you talking about like being able to see somebody hurting, picking up on somebody's personality of what their needs are versus maybe seeing like a Jennifer Comer who was always like behind that scenes, maybe taking a meal to somebody.
Right.
So that's two different types of
Yes.
serving in a
correct.
way.
Correct.
Okay. I just
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm driving at. All right, number 2, the server may neglect their own family's needs by being so busy helping others. So a server could get overextended, always trying to fix others, but they never have any time for themselves. So a checkpoint here would be, if you know that's your tendency, you need to keep a close eye on your priorities and make sure that you put your family before your job or before volunteering or even sometimes before church work. I mean, how many times I don't know how many times you've seen it. I've seen it more times than I would like to admit, where there have been like preachers in the church that are so busy serving, and meanwhile, their family at home is totally neglected. And somehow they justify that I'm doing the Lord's work. And meanwhile, losing all credibility because they're not doing their first best work, perhaps, by taking care of what's at home. Okay? So that may be something that the server needs to kind of keep a check on. Number 3, maybe you become pushy or interfering in the eagerness to help. So maybe sometimes you know that there is something that needs to be done and you're very, very pushy about it. And what can happen is you can be so hyper-focused on a specific need that's right here that you neglect to see that there may be a bigger picture at play that's only one piece of. So a checkpoint would be to be sensitive to the bigger picture that's going on and appreciate the importance of timing. There have been a lot of times in working with the church over the years that I'll have somebody come to me that has a high serving gift, and they're so attuned to a particular need, and they're like, we've got to do something about this, and we've got to do something about it now. And then you try to explain, okay, I see the need, and you're right. But please understand that we're trying to accomplish that, but within the framework of a much bigger plan. And now's not the time to tackle that just yet. And so as a server, you might need to kind of realize that there is a timing to things and sometimes a bigger picture at play. Number 4, you got to find it. Maybe you find it hard to accept being served by others. Are you the kind of person maybe that feels awkward? You love to serve, but you feel awkward when somebody's serving you. So if that's you, the checkpoint would be, if you know that it is a blessing from God for you to serve others, don't spoil somebody else's blessing by them serving you. Be humble enough to be able to accept the fact that sometimes others are going to serve you too. You're not always the one taking the meal. Sometimes somebody's bringing the meal to you. And don't rob others of the joy of serving. Number 5, maybe you're easily hurt when you feel unappreciated. You need appreciation, and it's so deep that you feel hurt if you've served and nobody seemed to recognize it. So if you feel that very strongly, a checkpoint may be you need to ask yourself, this is back to your point from a moment ago. Maybe you need to ask, who am I really serving? Maybe it's enough to look to the Lord for the appreciation. All right. So that was the first bell. If you need to get your kiddos from class, you can do that. We're going to wrap up here in about 3 minutes here in the class. So a prime example, I think, of the server gift, which I alluded to a moment ago, is Martha in Luke 10 and also mentioned in John 12. I mean, remember Martha and Mary were best friends of Jesus in the town of Bethany along with their brother Lazarus. Jesus would often go to Bethany for a retreat away from the crowds. And on one occasion, Jesus comes to their home and he's in the room apparently with several others and he's doing some teaching, but Martha is very busy in the kitchen preparing a meal for them, which is wonderful and great and needed. She's very quick to show hospitality, apparently, by inviting Jesus into her home. She probably is an individual who wants to show love through her actions. She recognizes the fact that Jesus and his apostles have traveled to be there, and it's mealtime, and I need to serve something. And that's all great and wonderful and beautiful. But maybe she is taking it a little bit too seriously, because she seems to become very agitated that Mary is not in there helping her. She probably sees serving as being the all-important, needful thing, and yet Jesus says to Martha, "Martha, Martha, you are troubled about many things, but Mary has chosen the better part." Now, a lot of times we study this story, and I think we give Martha a really hard time. There have been a lot of servers in the church. When I've preached on this text, I inevitably have people come up to me at the end of the sermon that have serving gift, and they say, "I think you're being real unfair to Martha. She was just trying to help," because they identify so much with her. So we're not trying to de-emphasize Martha's contribution, and we're not trying to de-emphasize the fact that she was doing something beautiful for her Lord. And if you're the server gift and you identify with Martha, God bless you. We need you. But I think what Jesus was trying to correct her about was not that she was serving, but the fact that she was bordering on feeling like that somehow that her gift was the most important gift. And that Martha ought to have that gift too. Or Mary ought to have that gift too. Mary ought to be in here doing it as well. You can see that she's anxious and she's overextended, probably a perfectionist about it, and probably feeling a bit unappreciated. If you have this server gift, you can understand that. She maybe is letting the details get too much in the way. So the point is this, is that the server gift is a needed part of the body. We need you if you're a server. We need the Marthas of the church. And even if you don't have the server gift, if there's a need, Jesus calls all of us to be servers, does he not? He calls all of us to serve. But just like if you look at this list that we read at the beginning of class, he says, some of you have the gift of encouraging, some of you have the gift of generosity. Well, you can't look at that list and say, well, I don't have the gift of generosity, therefore I don't ever have to give any money to the church. Or I don't have the gift of encouragement, so you know what? I'm just going to go around kind of being a sourpuss around everybody. All right? No. These are things that all Christians are called to do. It's not a question of that. It's a question of some of us are especially gifted in some of those areas. And if we are, let's walk into that and embrace that and thrive in that. But as you thrive in it, don't be so over the top with the gift that somehow you de-emphasize or underappreciate people that are different from you that have other strengths and giftings. Let's learn to appreciate one another and thrive in the gifts that God has given. All right, that's it for this particular one. Again, if you filled out the survey in a paper copy, please leave that with me before you leave today. If you filled it out on the app, then we'll have your results. And we'll move into the next gift, God willing, next Sunday. Have a great day.